may wonder what this pin is right here. This is a pin I just received at our banquet for our community health center. It's my 35-year pin of being a health center I helped start.
All right.
Anybody in this room over 35 years old? Wow. We're trouble than I thought. Okay, well, I'm going to try to give you a true story. I'm going to first, before a lecture, we always got to give a disclosure and conflict of interest. There are 50 people that work in my health center, providers of health care from PAs all the way through dentists and physicians. I'm recruiting you guys. So I'm going to tell you that right now. If you don't come to work for me, I want you to work for a community health center someplace. So that's my conflict. We're always needing people. I take care of 40,000 of the poorest, most underserved people in the country. And we need people. It's a people-to-people business. So I'm going to give you the true story of Doc Hollywood. Trust me. Okay, I'm a doctor. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Gary. You know, this school is very innovative, and the more I tour this campus, the more I realize you guys are cutting edge. It takes courage to innovate, and you partnered up with NAC, which is the medical home for underserved. So it's a great honor for me to be here to talk to you guys. This is pretty exciting. The tour I had today is spectacular. I've got 3 kids who've gone through medical school, 1 through medical school. I've been on faculty of medical schools. You're doing something very special out here, and that includes all the other allied health and other professions that you guys teach here. But don't ever forget, you know, if we're going to use movies, this is one of my favorite movies. Small guys in this, you can make a difference. Okay, this guy had a big heart, not much of a body. The last guy to get carried off the shoulders at Notre Dame. But when a bunch of these people come together, you can make a difference. My favorite movie in the whole world, Hoosiers. But it was people from the town of Milan, Indiana. 84 people won the state championships in all schools in 1952. Gary Plump made the shot. This is a true story. It actually happened. So these are some of my favorite sayings when you really get into this business. You know, genius, Thomas Edison, genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. I love this saying, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. This is a leadership institution. The rest of the country's trying to figure out what to do. Where you're leading, and hopefully the rest of them will get the hell out of the way. But here's one of my favorite quotes. Where are the remedies for this whole mess we have? Where do they lie? Remedies often are cells to lie, which we ascribe to heaven. That's Shakespeare, All's Well That Ends Well, Act 1, Scene 1. The idea is that we as individuals make a difference in this crazy system that we've got. So I try to figure out, how do I connect with all these people that, you know, you're young enough to be my kids. Some of them are younger than my kids. A bunch of you guys are. So I went out running yesterday. It's a beautiful place. Gary put me up a great place downtown at the Hyatt. And they actually had, you get a hot tub. It's in my room. And I got run. I said, well, maybe I'll think of how do I connect with you guys? And it wasn't functioning well, so this guy came in to repair it. And he said, just watch out for the controls, Doc. And I said, okay. And so I started thinking about what was it like when I was you guys' age. All of a sudden, the thing started spinning around and smoking. Before I knew it, my hot tub had turned into a time machine. You guys, who saw that movie? It should have been one of the latest movies. I told you. Your generation, you had a DeLorean, travel time. You know, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was a phone booth, so, you know, time travel. So there I went. I said, well, okay, now that I'm traveling back in time, what do things look like? Well, there was I when I was 23 years old, same age as you guys. You could drive into the front of the Capitol. It was my Ford Falcon there. I had long hair. Now I'm longing for hair. That day I came to the town to talk about going to a hip new joint downtown to hear somebody singing the blues. And now I'm singing the blues about getting a new hip joint. So that's what it was like back then. But it was a very disillusioning thing for me because I went to school at Cornell. We took over buildings. We started a Black Studies program there with Perry Edwards. I played football there for a while and got together with some of our students. And the idea was if you weren't part of the solution, you were part of the problem, but you could actually make a change. I go to medical school, and Richard Nixon was running, and everybody in medical school was for Richard Nixon. And I found myself kind of at odds, and I'd done a lot of work in medical sociology. I'd worked with a couple of the state mental health institutions in New York. and realized that there was a big disconnect out there. But I thought medical students, we were going to change society. And what I found out that this medical school and their medical was changing me. And it was really disconcerting. And this is the way I saw it. 1972, Ohio State Medical School. I knew from personal experience, my dad was a faculty member, we were uninsured. So I had level uninsured, critical shortage of physicians in rural areas, following healthcare costs, poor healthcare incomes for indigent minorities. Medical schools are ramming a bunch of technology down our throats to pass licensing exams. I know none of you guys are interested in that. Research and was to advance science and not the health status in society. Specialization was promoted, primary care was discouraged. I hope that's not happening here. Financial success was the primary expectation of most of my colleagues and faculty. Uninsured were good teaching cases, not responsible for private physicians. 50% of us wanted to be family docs. When we entered 10% and left that way, we had a big debt. Now, I know none of you guys are in debt. All my kids are $250,000 in debt from the medical school. Discouraged primary care. There was no curriculum on health policy, society, health planning, and system development, no clinical exposure to the community. So I was very disillusioned with that. And I was talking to one of my advisors. I had some time off, and I said, I want to do something different. So he said, you know, there's a bunch of people that feel the same way. There's this U.S. The Committee on Economic Development, 1972. This nation was appointed to take decisive action as some of the finest hospital physicians in the world, spectacular advances, but health status lags other countries. Service developed unevenly, poor, rural, and underserved in cities suffer the most. Major health problems went from acute to chronic. 40 million uninsured. Now, this is 1972, okay, not 2012. We spent more money than any other one nation in the world on health care. $12 billion the year I was born in 1950, $83 billion in 72. The gross domestic product from 50 was 4.6% to 7.6%. Spending per capita, $78, went up to $394 total spending, and health inflation was an existent fragment there. So this committee got together and said, let's build a national health care system. Anybody ever see this book? I read it cover to cover about 3 times. I said, hey, that's part of the solution. Unless you think that these were a bunch of, you know, radical socialists from Berkeley or, you know, places like that. Here's who's on this committee, okay? There's a Heinz on there, H.J. Heinz, IBM, Pillsbury. These were the corporate America. These are basically 200 white guys. 1972 saying we can't afford health care, it's killing our economy, we can't compete, let's do something about it. And here's what their solutions were, okay? Well, one of the problems was health care costing up. In 1950, only 10% of the health care was paid for by insurance. It's up to 40% as money came into the system, Medicare, Medicaid came in at 65. All of a sudden, you had this huge financial engine, and you know, when there's a lot of money, we find ways to spend it. So their idea was to make HMOs available, every state prepayment for health care. These are accountable care organizations, have neighborhood health centers so that every place had a health center so that we had a place to deliver care, community mental health, employer mandate, so everybody had insurance, Medicare expansion, and federally sponsored trusteeships, which are like exchanges, okay? They'd have a regional health planning agency so that we'd have intelligent design, and then we developed 4 things: the National Service Corps, Family Practice Residency programs, AMACs, and physician assistant programs. So they took a hard look and said, this is the solution to the problem. This is 1972. Well, once you do that, then you got to make something happen. So, not part of the solution. So I went to Washington. You saw me in my nice long hair. I worked with William Roy, a physician from Kansas, and Rogers. Has everybody ever heard of Happy Trails? Yeah. Okay, Roy Rogers, right? Roy and Rogers. That was called the Happy Trails. That was the singing cowboy when I was a kid, and Happy Trails was the lead-in song for his show. So to make this system work, we had to develop all these infrastructure pieces. So when these 2 guys got together, they got about 15 of us. We worked there night and day, didn't get paid a cent, you know, and we cranked out legislation. And this is Roy, Dr. Rogers, he died in 2008, a great guy. This is a guy I worked with. HMOs were delivered to this country by an obstetrician from Kansas, a rural doctor from Kansas who said, I can make a difference. Hardest working guy I've ever seen. This is what the law looked like. So when I went back in my time machine, I actually had all these pictures of this legislation. But the HMOs redesigned healthcare so you could pay up front. The incentive was to keep people healthy. And this is from Senator Kennedy. We had Kennedy Griffith's bill was to put in the legislation for this, the national health insurance. When universal entitlement under national health insurance, when it was enacted and later this year. Well, what happens with politics? And then we had a health planning agency, and this is what the act looked like. And this nation still doesn't have health planning, but it was a centralized planning agency. The system is fragmented, inflationary, and a non-system. So they put a planning agency in. The goal was that for between 500,000 and 3 million people, looked at accessibility, acceptability, continuity, and quality, accessibility. So this is back 40 years ago. There was one planner for 100,000. This passed, and that actually happened. Doesn't exist today. National Health Service Corps. Here's what the bill looked like that we put through. I had a dentist to the National Health Service Corps. That was the piece I did. Because they said there were areas in the country that didn't have doctors. You may be hearing the same today. The Secretary shall pay in full the principal and the interest on any outstanding educational loans. So you go spend 3 years or 4 years out there, you're out of debt. You know, if you want to go back and do something else, that's great. So, you know, great idea. Community health centers. There are only 150 as a demo project. We put it into the authority so that it actually became part of the infrastructure of this country. Jack Geiger, one of the great heroes, started the first one. He was just at the last NACCOM, National Association of Community Health Centers meeting in Chicago. Great guy, still a lot of energy at 90 years old. But one of the things you find out, politicians don't live forever. They get beat. You know, even though Dr. Roy was one of the best politicians I've ever seen, Bob Dole beat him by 5,000 votes. And what he told me, he says, now son, he says, get the hell out of Washington and watch how the government screws up a great idea. He said there's 3 types of bureaucrats. One that works for you, one that works with you, and one that works against you. And see what happens. So I went back, I finished my residency. I got my future wife, who was a physician assistant, a master's trained nurse, a physical therapist, and also my sister was a social worker, and my brother-in-law was a physician. We'd go any place in the country, ready to join public health service to make $30,000 a year. They couldn't find a community that fit that. So the bureaucrat was working with us, wouldn't do anything more bureaucratically. So I was complaining to this guy named Neil Schulman, who I was doing hypertension research with. He was advisor to Dr. Alley. Jimmy Carter's president happened to be in Georgia. So I knew we had some opportunity. We met with Dr. Skelton, who was the head of healthcare for Georgia. They said they would make it happen for us, assign us to the Improved Pregnancy Outlook program in the state of Georgia. But we just had to go someplace. They had 2 opportunities. One was the University of Athens, where the University of Georgia was. The other one was Southwest Georgia, but I'd never heard of. So I said, how about those dogs, the Georgia Bulldogs? So I get in the car with this guy. We drive down to this community. There's the mayor, chicken dinner, and says, here's your new doctor. This county of 20,000 had not had a doctor in 40 years. I couldn't believe it. I said, this is what we're looking for. So I asked somebody where the stadium was. You know, when the Bulldogs played, he said, well, son, that's 4 hours from here. They're already. They had tricked me and my future wife to go to this community because they said, that's really what you're looking for. Everybody wants to go to the University of Georgia in Athens, but nobody wanted to go down to South Georgia. So I went back and basically had to tell my brother-in-law, you know, I said, hey, this is what we signed up for, but it's what we needed. So here was Dumb and Dumber. I basically thought, if he's dumb enough to marry my sister, he's dumb enough to join this thing. And he said, he's dumb enough to introduce me to his sister, he's deaf enough. So that was the 2 of us. We decided, let's go down and let's do it. And here's something away from the past. This is a telegram, where I text messages. That was my words to join public health service. So I basically said, screw the crap, let's make the commitment. Neil ended up writing this into a book, which was called But Then Again, which then got purchased by Warner Brothers. That became Doc Hollywood. Okay? So on further review, commitment is kind of cool. So one of the remedies to where things lie is your commitment. You got to personally commit to something. Neil wrote this in the book about a doctor who falls for a hot EMT. My wife ended up couldn't get into public health service because she had exercise-induced asthma. She was a cheerleader at Chapel Hill, was a basketball player, and she ended up, because she saw so many people that died before they got to the ICUs that she ran, she thought the pre-admission care was very important, what happened out in the communities, and so she started a paramedic program, has now taught over 500 paramedics, and it's been a wonderful thing to add. But he wrote this book, Warner Brothers bought it up. They actually filmed 2 endings to this. One, the guy stays out in Hollywood, the other one, he comes back. And when they tested it, what they said, the doctors shouldn't be jerks. Their commitment was cool, the fact that he came back. And it was kind of interesting because what this did is it kind of hit a sweet spot in society because they realized communities can't exist without running water, without utilities, without health care. So people really got into this thing. I got on the cover of USA Today. This lady here, Miss Ethel, her dad was a slave. He was one of the people that W. Du Bois, when he wrote Souls of Black Folks in 1890, was interviewed. I hired her granddaughter to be my first nurse in Baker County. What they didn't realize, which was another comment, what they didn't realize is that the Ku Klux Klan was still very active in Baker County at that time. So we got threats and all kinds of nasty stuff, but we did get some publicity on this. I got on the cover of Georgia Trend and said, well, the country doctor really isn't a trend, and rural hospitals are closing. There's a real emergency, and we can't really, and this is a commerce thing, and you can't have a city without doctors. Georgia Trend listed me as one of the 100 most powerful, influential Georgians. There's my name, but there's Jimmy Carter and Newt Gingrich and all these folks. What they realize is this is a powerful force in the community. So one person can make a difference if they get the right people around them. But the Doc Hollywood story is just getting there. What do you do after you're there? And how do you make stuff happen? Well, I knew I had all these tools. I started working with the health department and others, and we did some health planning. And these were the tools I knew were out there federally. So I said, let's jump on these things. So we started an HMO way back then. Excuse me. It's the Georgia Bulldog Park. Sorry about that. But anyway, we started this HMO, got it going. That was the thing that went. We had health system agencies. We went and actually, one of the realizes that, they thought we were a bunch of communists. We sat down with the local doctors, got the hospital together and said, we want to help solve the problem. We want to be part of the team. So we put together this team. We got money from the Coca-Cola folks. We put together this intelligent designers plan, which was very comprehensive. The second remedy is you got to be comprehensive. I've seen everything in there. Acquired generalized lipodystrophy, we reported one of 37 cases. I've seen Heidi syndrome, Marfan syndrome, promyelocytic leukemia. Even though you're in a rural community, people get things, but you got to connect to the medical neighborhood. So comprehensiveness was key. National Service Corps was great back then. We had 2,000 scholarship people in the Corps. We could actually recruit to come down. They actually gave money to us through their, they were actually paid for by the Public Health Service. But the linchpin of all this thing was the Community Health Center. So this is, the vision of what we had with Dr. White was to make a medical home for the unserved. This is 40 years ago. And it was a complicated process. You had to get grant writers and all that stuff. But it gave us an infrastructure to deliver health care. And this was our first board of directors. And the remedy 3 is inclusiveness. You've got to be part of the community. Back then, rural and urban didn't work together, and black and white didn't work together. And it was a great challenge. 20 years earlier, you've been thrown in jail for violating the Jim Crow laws in the state of Georgia by having black and white people congregate together to do business. But we got key leadership in there, which you realize, like we saw in Hoosiers, this is a team sport. So we had, the mayor, we had the largest producer of pecans in the country, Sun. But one of the key things we did, a couple people from public health, school system, we knew we had to get the black and white community together. So we had a historically black college, Albany State College. So we asked Dr. Billy Black to be on a board of directors, which he did, and helped bring the black community. But we had to get the white community willing to join. So what would you logically do? Well, we asked Dr. Paul White to actually be honestly, God knows, and Paul's one of the great guys. his son's still practicing emergency there. So we had the blacks and whites together. Martin Luther King Day yesterday. You don't realize just how challenging. Dr. King spent more time in jail in Albany, Georgia, trying to open up the restaurants in that day other place in the country. We started a civil rights museum in his honor down there. But these were tough times. That was the first grant. Actually, a civil rights worker who had been down there in jail for 2 years came back. He's a Harvard graduate. He wrote our first grant. Very complicated stuff. So we were on a roll. Well, what does New Broccoli have to do with this? Okay, so we're on a roll. I got an HMO going out. I got a health center. We got docs coming in. We got a health center. We're on a roll. How can you stop that? Well, President Reagan, who that is, was nicknamed the Giver because he played in this movie, George Gift. I don't know where I'll be, but when I die, I'll know about it. Just ask him to go out and win one for the Giver. Well, that's where he gave this. So all of a sudden, Ronald Reagan becomes president, and our world changes. Everything we had is now zeroed out. Zero, the Health Systems Agency, National Service Corps, community health centers. So what happened is it's unanticipated in public policy is where Nixon's Watergate. You have Republicans, Democrats working together for health reform, and all of a sudden Nixon resigns as president of the United States. We've got a constitutional crisis. This got on the back burner. So what we thought was going to happen that year didn't happen. President Carter came in, we had double-digit inflation, and then Reagan came in and said, you know, like the Tea Party folks today, let's shrink government, let's get government out of things, let's let the market decide. And so that's what happened. These programs were saved because we had grassroots people who fought to save various things here, including the community health centers, health systems agencies, and so parts of this survived. AHEC survived, family practice, because there were grassroots people willing to go fight. So one of the things you got to learn is that, you know, this battle is always a political battle. So they couldn't get rid of us because we blocked them. So they said, we're going to take all the federal dollars and give them to the states. And after 3 years, the money goes away. And several states signed up for it. So we had a battle with block grants. I was the president of the State Primary Care Association. We actually fought it. The governor, who happened to be from Albany, Georgia, lived down the block, and they thought it was a good idea. So we had a little bit of tough politics there. But we were able to block grants by legal action. So that stopped. So the health center is still around today because of the activity. So they couldn't get rid of the health center. Let's get rid of all these doctors. So I learned a little bit about the acronyms. So if you get a bureaucrat against you, you can make your life miserable. I was called up and said I was being rifted, and if I didn't show up to the Rosebud Indian Reservation within 24 hours, I would be considered AWOL and could be stuck in the stockade. So I had a few interesting things to say. We had to make some decision at that point, but they basically just cleaned us all out. That didn't sell well with career people in the National Service Corps who really believed in what we were doing, where Carter people came in. So they sent out this letter, official stationery, and it was about retired age person early called raping, and the survey for capacity for early retirement workers called screwing. All employees who have been raped and screwed may also apply for final review, which is called Study for Higher Authority Following Termination of shaft. Policy dictates employees may be raped once, screwed twice, but get the shaft as many times as National Service Corps. So, you know, never irritate a bureaucrat, never be on the wrong side, because they can really make your life miserable. So, you know, you kind of, you know, I'm a young guy, like 30 years old, and, you know, I've got all these things. Now all of a sudden, you know, we're playing defense. Herschel Walker, George the national title that year, and you know it's not very fun. Well, Dr. White got with me a bunch of the board says, you know, the hell with this playing defense. You know, failing to plan is planning to fail. We've got all the resources here to do local planning. National health reform is dead, but you know we can actually start our own local health system. So we sat down with all the key people. We went through all the critical epidemiology. These are life cycles. Who's going to do it? We set up plans. We drew these models about like an invasion. HIV was coming in. How many lives would it take? We coordinated the hospital health department. So we actually got together. The CDC did a formal study of this, and they said that this is a really good model of people getting together. It was, you know, coming together as a team, like in Hoosiers, little individuals coming together to make a difference. And what the conclusion was, it improves health outcomes and avoids excessive costs. I was on an IOM committee looking at the integration of public health and primary care, and we came up with the exact same conclusion last year. In March, we came up with a presentation. There's going to be some stuff coming out about planning. But it's getting together makes a difference. And what difference can you make? Well, here's stuff we did through all the years of doing this. We actually did a fetal mortality review looking at the spacing. It was Harvard, Hopkins, and Albany area primary health care for all this study. We started a registry for immunization, which became GRITS, the Georgia University Immunization, became a national model. Our health center sees over 35,000 patients, now to 40. We're up to 3 million visits. We did a chronic disease case management program, started a residency program, because workforce is always important. You can't run this without workforce. If you look at your needs in the community, we can't do it without the people in this room. We actually did disaster response. We started an HIV model. There was a health reform bill in '93 that was based on this model and what we did. We started an AAC, Community Health Planning Center, and a cancer coalition. We brought the President's Commission, Magic Johnson came down. We had the first people to talk about real AIDS, that you need to have a way of doing it. We started a program for HIV, wrote the first grant here. This is Dr. White, who actually was the mastermind behind that. He gave me my MPH. I've got an in-the-field MPH. But he really made HIV a disease that can make a difference. We have now enrolled, we have 1,000 HIV patients, rural HIV patients, the largest one in the country. We had a big flood that hit Twitch, which is rain. We developed a command and control structure over this, and it became what's called the Albany algorithm, which is actually a national plan where it's talked about satellites and that. Here's a bill that Congressman Rowland made his position from Georgia, actually looking at using this model in health center expansions way of satisfying the country's needs. We started an AHAC, we started the summit, we now have the largest navigator system for colorectal cancer screening in the country. We've done over 3,900 colonoscopies. Of course, my son doesn't give me a break. This comes out in great news. And Dad Jimmy's the story of my first colonoscopy. Is what he gave me as a birthday present. So, we did this little timetable, time traveling, going back to 1972. And a lot of questions come up, what have we done in all these years? What difference have we made? What's really going to happen? Did we control inflation? No, it's now 18%. And back then, 6.4% is too much. Medical inflation. Health status, we're still, in the bottom 20 of its developed countries. But health centers did flourish. It was a good idea that stuck. 22 million people served as the largest system in the country. Mental health centers never flourished. Did we do something about healthcare costs? Well, 12 billion to 2,000 billion in '98. What's important in '98? Well, we had an election. Per capita spending, remember, it was $78 a year as born. It's now $7,170. That's about 10 times inflation. Do we get better outcomes with all the money we're spending? No, we don't. Health centers were a big success. This is one of our time travelers, the Terminator. We're going to have state solutions. Well, Arnold couldn't even keep his pants on and couldn't keep in the governorship, and we're traveling someplace else. But the states haven't come up with solutions either. Is no insurance bad for your health? Yeah, it is. We now have 50 million. Back then we had 40 million. No medical homes cause disparities. Access removes disparities. Stuff we've known for 40 years. We still don't have a system. Still talk about the fact we don't have planning. The one big problem with the Affordable Care Act, there's no central planning. There's no manpower piece that was funded. Is primary care dead? I hope the answer from a lot of people in this room is no, it's not, especially rural primary care. Will we ever get people insured? I don't know. I mean, what we've got right now looks real good. One of the big problems, this is one of the things I studied in college with medics, was you've got a huge empire out there, people that make a lot of money on healthcare, and most of it aren't going to be the people in the room here, or their primary care docs. So there's a lot of power, and that's what the Clintons found out. And health reform, actually, if you look at it carefully, from 1950 on, this was the stuff in '71 that Nixon started. We had a Republican president, we had Kennedy, we had all these people working together, both parties. What we couldn't anticipate was Watergate and the impacts of that. So, are we any closer today with what's there? I don't know. I can't predict the future. I travel in the past. And I can tell you, it didn't sound the problem back then. This was the Clinton's great idea. I actually testified to Ira Magaziner, and I looked at these guys and I said, you're never going to beat these guys. And, 10 years later, an abject failure. 2004, Bush came in, was he going to do reform? Well, he doubled the number of dollars in health centers. Even the Republicans' health centers are good business, along with the National Service Corps. Well, the 2008 election, what's going to happen? I can't tell you. One thing I've seen in these 40 years of being here, we've increased in cost, complexity. Will comprehensive health reform come? I don't know. We've got an opportunity to do something now. But through those years, millions of examples of innovations about health care. And why does that happen? Is because, we took interest in people. And, health reform can come on an individual basis if people like the people in this room do something about it. So our fourth remedy here is caring. The secret of caring of the patient is caring for the patient. Francis Peabody, while he was dying of gastric cancer 80 years ago, said that, it's caring for the people we see. And Antonio Novello, U.S. Surgeon General, first Hispanic Surgeon General, people do not care how much they don't until they know what you care. So never allow them to be the carrying out, because I'll tell you through the years, that's what's given me the most satisfaction is the people that I take care of. I still see patients every day, very sick people. But whose job is it to care? John Paul said, healthcare is not a market commodity that can be distributed because poor people can't buy it, and you can't have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness if you don't have life. And of course, in tribute to Dr. King, whose birthday was yesterday, of all the forms of inequality, injustice in health is the most shocking and most inhumane because you don't have life. So we actually wrote a sequel. When the movie came out, it made $300 million. We did the sequel. It's called Where Remedies Lie. I gave a couple of copies to Gary because I do think that remedies are organizations and institutions like A.T. Still, but you have to care to want to do this. What we did in this book is describe what happens after Doc Hollywood gets there, what's he need to do next. And we went through the whole sequence of coming together, developing communities. We threw stuff in there historically about the National Service Corps and Jack Tiger. We took it out to Hollywood. They got a screenplay. We wrote a screenplay. We had negotiated a 3% position in the movie. And then what happened? During the filming of the first Doc Hollywood, Michael J. Fox got Parkinson's disease. We didn't know that. He didn't disclose it for 2 years, but they didn't want to launch a commercial vehicle like this with the guy, and you couldn't have Fox in there, so he wasn't going to do a big thing. So, healthcare affects all of us. It's one of those things you never know what's going to hit. But that's what this story is about, is about how you actually do there. And we got this quote because what my conclusion was that remedies do lie in what we do. But writing this book, you found that you had all these stories of patients you took care of, people whose lives you changed, which is really. But I'm not the first doctor to write. Michael Crichton, wrote about Andromeda strain in Congo and Jurassic Park, and that was about DNA and what a difference this makes and the power of locking within the cell. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was the one who wrote Sherlock Holmes, and it was about the powers of observation of Dr. Joseph Bell when he was at Edinburgh. And Anton Chekhov was a rural physician who died of TB. And they wrote about this technology or the scientific process, about this incredible human contact we have with people. But these are not the most read medical writers of all time. Does anybody know who's the most read medical writer of all time? Well, the answer is in Paul's letter to Colossians, Luke, the beloved physician. We have a Catholic priest, and he did this sermon, and I didn't know about Luke and all this stuff. But he said Luke was special because as a physician, he described compassion, tenderness. And unique to Luke is the story of the Good Samaritan. There's no place else in the Bible that you get a break as a physician, the Good Samaritan, because of unselfish acts. And the Samaritans were a hated minority. And he talked about fallen women and lost sheep and cripples and lepers and the despised minorities and about the big tent of salvation, because he realized if this movement of religion was going to work, it had to have a place for everybody. Society would only be better if everybody had a place. And if you're developing healthcare for your medical community, if you don't have a big tent that brings people in, you'll never be able to have a very healthy and productive society. So, physicians are there to take care of the sick and the forgotten. Health centers do that, but that's actually what makes our community stronger, is remove health disparities. So, Big question is, will we ever have national health insurance? Will we ever have a way that everybody's got access? Or will it be driven by individual assurance? You know, each of us in this room can make a difference for the people we see because we decide to keep seeing them. Where we go to work, what kind of work we do. But I think what's happened in the last 40 years is health reform has actually happened one person at a time who make that commitment and jump in. But this is the time we have great opportunities. You know, I've watched the cycle of opportunities go for the last 40 years. It's kind of like the seasons. You know, there's a planting season. This is a planting season. There's rain, there's environment. So there's great expectations. New England Journal agrees. You know, we got a new deal coming. It's rolling out now with exchanges and other things. But we still have some old problems. You know, now we're down to 2.2 trillion. Still a shortage of primary care docs out there. So we're paging the president, but I'm also paging you guys, okay? Because I don't know who the next president's going to be, you know? The giver may come back. This all may change, and may all be back in your lap, and we'll have some opportunities. But you always have the chance to get hosting the shows because you have the opportunity to go out. And my brother-in-law, you saw, he did 6 years there and went on to be a cardiologist after that. He said one of the most fulfilling parts of his career was the work he did down in South Georgia. And people will host you up, you know, their shoulders to do this. But you got to find a team, and it's very important we learn to work within the team. Because right now what's happening is people are looking for these remedies. And they didn't lie themselves, so the remedies will lie for this country in people like yourselves who come into next oncologists, who commitment, comprehensiveness, inclusiveness, and care. And as I said earlier, you can trust me because I've taught enough students, I've seen the way you select your students, I've seen your curriculum, I've seen what you do, I see what the school's all about, and I do think within this room, there are people that can be remedies for this ailing healthcare system. So you got to trust me on that one. And you know why you have to trust me? Because I'm a doctor. That's my daughter. She just graduated. I gave her this T-shirt. Trust me, I'm a doctor. I did my oldest son's commencement address, and I said one of the most moving things that ever happened to me is I took care of a guy who was a horrible alcoholic. He actually was the head of Kennedy's first election campaign up. He was a BU graduate, hockey player. 10 times they admitted him for alcoholism. Finally, his wife threw him out. He took a gun, he shot himself, and even screwed that up. He didn't kill himself, he got a bullet in his brain, didn't die from it. And afterwards, we sat down and said, I don't care what you do, Phil, I'm always going to be here for you. You got money, you don't have money, where this door is open. I want you to get better. And he started to go to AA. 2 years later, he's sober through AA, his wife comes back to him, then his job comes back, and then he's got a grandson who's in my son's fraternity, telling him what a great guy Grandpa Phil is and all this. And at age 79, he came in to me, and he said, I'm dying of that lung cancer. I wanted, it's not official, but I just want to thank you. He said, what you did, he said, you accepted me, but I didn't even accept myself. My family didn't accept me. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I ended up trusting you when I didn't trust myself. And through that trust and belief, you healed me by giving me hope. And I told these kids graduated from medical school, I said, that's the kind of thing you put up on your walls, a trophy. It's a great thing to remember, but it was that trust that was built up that allowed him to believe that he could get better and change. And, you know, I got probably 1,000 other stories like that, but it's probably one of the most important things that we do in this business. So, trust me, I'm a doctor. Your patient will trust you. You know, you'll be a 25-year-old, 26-year-old person, but the thing that they have most precious in their life, they're going to put in your hands to make better. So you got to honor that trust. And the reason you're going to have to do that is because, you know, I'm kind of near the finish line here. And that is my wife and I. We still do some exercises that we just had done an Olympic distance triathlon here. But I took this picture, I kind of realized that, you know, we're kind of at the end of our career, and we've got to find who's going to be the next one stepping up, because I do believe we have people in this room who can do that. So, you know, that's kind of my challenge today. You know, Doc Holly will ride again if one of you guys do it. It's a great story. You know, it's been a very interesting challenge. The reality is that none of us knows what the future's going to hold with health reform. You know, remedies don't lie in heaven, the federal government, and the state government. Remedies probably lie in your hearts and desire, you know, to care, to be inclusive, to be compassionate about folks, and to be committed individuals. So it's been a real pleasure for me to get a chance to talk to you guys, make my pitch. I'm signing up people who want to come work with us afterwards, but thank you very much for your time.
We have a couple of moments if there are any questions from the audience or for some questions, and then afterwards Dr. Hotz will be available to talk individually if you'd like.
Where do you think the National Health Service is going now?
Oh, wow. You know, it's not really offered. It's a real challenge. Everybody wants it, but in today's climate where we're cutting everything, it goes away. There's a group called the Clinicians for the Underserved, and they're actually trying to resurrect the poor. But it is a real challenge. Everybody knows that we've got a crisis in the cost of education. Everybody knows what debt does to you guys. But the problem is that, you know, this is not 74 where we had the president work together. We have people that won't agree to anything. So there's a real chance it could be gone. Now, in our state of Georgia, we're looking at, you know, the state actually chipping in, and I know other states are doing that. But we have an enormous crisis. The court was actually a very good program, and, you know, when you hand it over to your bureaucracy, you never know what's going to happen to it. But I think there's a real chance it could be gone unless, like we did back, you know, when Reagan came in, you know, it's going to take a lot of grassroots advocacy to get out there to keep it out there. Is anybody here in debt that would be interested in the corner? How many of you guys are in debt?
All right. Another question? Yes.
Sure, we know that there's going to be huge shortages of primary care physicians, physician's assistants. It's predicted there won't be enough to serve the population. What do you think is the role of other healthcare providers in the system?
Well, it's interesting. I chair our state's primary care workforce. Our AX started a workforce group because, you know, the Sun Belt states that grew, the number of residency slots were capped in 1996 with the Balanced Budget Act. And so states that grew like Georgia, 78%, we have 20 residency slots per 100,000 population. New York, Massachusetts, all the Rust Belt states are over 50. We're not going to have enough doctors coming out. The number going into primary care is, we're going to be 53,000 short. And what's going to have to happen is that we're going to have to develop these collaborative patient-centered medical homes where you bring other people in. You know, I know you guys are looking at expanding the physician assistants, community health workers, other people coming into that. But, you know, there's still going to be people getting sick at night. Somebody's going to have to go to the hospital. I mean, we're going to have a shortage of physicians. And it's very complicated to explain to folks that, you know, at one time we had 24,000 first-year residency slots for 18,000 graduates 10 years ago. Now we'll have 800 more graduate than we have, and then we have 6,000 people offshore medical schools to come back. So we've got a full-blown crisis, and I do think we're going to have to expand the model of care, the way we do it. I don't think that automation is going to make that much of a difference. In fact, we're 7 years into our EMR system, and I think it probably slows us down some. I think we deliver better quality with it, and we're more efficient. But, you know, we have some major challenges, and the atmosphere right now in DC is toxic. You know, they got these automatic cutbacks on spending, and these discretionary programs are out there that would put money into Title VII to take a hard look at what's necessary. Then the Affordable Care Act is actually a national manpower group that was charged to do this. I actually got interviewed to go on that group. And what happened is, in the spat that went on, they said, okay, it's there in the bill, but we're just not going to fund it. So what you saw in 1972, we actually had a national planning that looked at these manpower tough issues. Because back then we were training 8,000 physicians a year. If they went up to 15,000, they took a hard look at adding physicians assistants, nurse practitioners. So they were very, forward thinking and predicting what they were going to need in the model. But we don't have any intelligent design. So what's happening now is it's a political process. And right now, it's a very toxic environment. The way the bill was passed, put a line in the sand, and it made people not want to work with each other.
Let me slip in his short answer since we talked about it earlier. Yeah, he believes that a variety of healthcare professionals are going to be invited into the team, and it's the only way that we're going to be able to take care of the population down the road. All right, you guys, thank you very much. You'll be able to answer some questions.